All right, I guess I'm just going to go ahead and get started. And this will be recorded and all that good stuff. It'll be available on YouTube and on Facebook and anywhere you want to watch it. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. This is just a couple of different examples, kind of the same thing that we're doing here. We're going to, I know, Steve's here. I'm so glad to see Steve. I'm going to start off with a pencil, and then we're going to do some watercolors on top of it, and maybe a little colored pencils afterwards if you got them laying around, but it's not mandatory, right? So let me just take these things down. We'll put this one up here. We'll put this one right here. And normally I like to do watercolors on a flat surface. For the sake of good lighting today, though, I'm doing this on an incline. So I may get a little drip, but you know what? If it drips, that's cool, because making a mess is part of the fun of making art and painting, in my personal opinion. All right, so I got my little sheet of paper here. This is just a half sheet that I ripped in half. And then I'm going to start with my pencil. So I'm going to go about, if I look about halfway, and then maybe a little bit farther down than that. I'll start with my pencil. I'm just going to do a long, kind of shallow curve there, right? Almost like a smirk. Thanks, Steve. I'm so glad you're here, man. I really appreciate it. So yeah, we got a long little curve here, and then I'm going to do the same thing, almost like an echo, just a little bit below it. Right? Now, I'm going to connect these two things at a slight angle, just a slight little angle. So kind of like those in just a little bit. All right. I'm going to go down a little bit farther, maybe like, I don't know, a finger, 2 fingers, depending on how big your fingers are, right here. I'm going to do a smaller curve. This one's a little bit shorter. All right. Now go and see, remember how this was at an angle and this was at an inward angle? We're going to do the same thing here, just real light, and connect those two. We have the makings of our flower pot. Super technical, super advanced technique. Just kidding. You guys are doing great so far, I'm sure. So now I can draw this in the back if I want, you know, just to maybe get an idea where the rest of this pot is. Now this is just going to be like the opposite of this. I have this curve right here. It's the exact opposite. It's just going to be a curve that goes up a little bit, like an upside down smile. All right, so we got our little pot. Remember, it's below that halfway mark. We want plenty of space up here for cool little flowers. Now, we're going to start off really simple with the, let me get my example here. We got these two stalks, whatever you want to call them. I'm just going to draw a real light line. One line. Coming right out of that pot, right? And then another line right next to it. Get a little closer here. Now this line is going to come up about 3/4 of the way, the same, you know, right next to that first line. But then we're going to curve outwards this way. Maybe even throw another one right there, like a backwards F, letter F. Right? So that's the basis for our pot and our stalks up here. Now we want to have some leaves. We're going to have some leaves down here in the base. And these leaves are big, long leaves. Really similar to this curve we made here. Right? We had this one that bows out this way, this one that bows out that way, and they connected. This is actually going to be very similar. So I'll make one big one right here, bows out like that, and then this one is opposite, bows right underneath that way. It comes down. They all meet at the base of that plant. All right, we're going to do another one over here. So let's do one over here first. We'll do this one right here. bows back in. Now we're going to have a couple more here. These are behind it. So while I have this, it kind of bows out this way. Save myself the trouble from erasing later. I'm going to bring it down like this and just stop right there, because this one is going to be in front of this one, right? And I'm going to do the same thing over here. So it goes out this way and then it comes in and stops right there. You know, you can do different stuff. You can put one there, whatever. However you like your plant to be. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Alright, there's a couple more things we're going to do with our pencil before we get into the fun stuff. Alright. One is I'm going to figure out where this little horizon line is going to be. That's that straight line, that flat line that shows us behind the pot. Alright, so I'm going to go, if I look right here, it's about an inch up from the bottom of that pot. I want it to make it look like the pot is on the table, right? So I'm just going to draw a line a little bit up. It goes behind that pot. Alright, if you're with me, good job. Thanks for joining. Alright, next part is the flowers, and this is pretty much the last we have to do with the pencil, I think, for now, that we are going to work on. So the flowers, for the flowers I just made really easy little shapes. I just made little butterfly shapes, right? So I start with really thick ones at the base, and then they get smaller and smaller and smaller as they go farther out. Butterfly wing, well, that was a pretty bad butterfly wing. Let's say butterfly wing like that, and then a butterfly wing like that. Now to give you a better example, just to show you close up, right? If you can't see it clearly enough, I'm just making a shape that looks like this. This is why I call it a butterfly. Looks kind of like that. It can move around, it can, you know, whatever. It doesn't have to be the same shape every time. In fact, it's better if it's not. Alright. The only important thing is that we want to make sure is they get smaller as they go out towards the ends. So butterflies are getting smaller, 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 smaller. Again, maybe we'll have some come out this way. I know I didn't draw a stalk here, but it's okay. Smaller, smaller, until they're just little dots. Same thing over here. Little butterflies. Trying for a while to figure out how to explain the shape, but I think butterfly is pretty accurate. Again, I'm starting off bigger, down towards the base here. Little pencil. Now this pencil, you know, you can erase this later as much as you want, or you can leave as much as you want. It's all really up to you. I like to have a little bit of pencil in my watercolor stuff, but then again, I never really trained in watercolors. I just kind of go with what I enjoy, and it seems to usually work out okay. You know, just keep practicing. Like my dear friend the other day said, practice makes progress. Again, bigger at the base, and they get smaller, maybe they curve out down a little bit because, you know, gravity. Alright, so we've got the basic shape for our flower pot, our potted flower. Now, just because I want to be thorough, I'm going to just take my eraser and go over some of these areas, like this stalk right here, right? This stem goes down. It'll probably be behind this leaf, or maybe be in front of it. Should we leave it in front of it? Let's leave it in front of it. So I'll erase a little bit of that leaf just so I have a little place to operate there. Maybe even lighten some of these lines up so they're not too harsh, too pronounced with the pencil marks. Right in here, clean some of this up. I don't want to see the back of that pot, flower pot, if I don't need to, you know, if it wouldn't be there. It's kind of messy right here. Maybe even another little leaf right here. And then we'll clear this up. All right. All right, we're ready to make a mess. Still good. Thanks, Maddie. Thanks for coming. All right. Now I got my watercolors. These are the watercolors that I'm using. They came right out of the Katie Cares Art to Go bags. So if you guys are watching from the hospital, you should have this stuff. You know, if you don't, just ask somebody around you, like your Child Life people, and they'll get one for you. I got a little brush, a little tiny brush. You can use any brush. This brush came with the set, but I like my little brush. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse off the brush first, get it nice and wet, and I'm going to start with some of this stuff in the foreground. I'm going to start with my flower pot. All right, rinse off my brush. I'm going to dampen it, or dry it a little bit so it's not super soaking wet. I'm going to get some, let's see, what do I got here? I got some brown paint on my brush here. I'm going to get some of this brown paint right here. Again, I don't want too much water personally because I'm working on an incline, but you know, make it as messy as you want. Just keep in mind the paper can only hold so much water before you paint a hole through it. All right, so starting with the brown, just going to trace my line a little bit. Go underneath here, down here. I like to pay attention to where the darker areas are going to be and then sort of paint back up and out a little bit. So I'm going to start right here in the middle. I'm just going to get this nice brownish color. Do the same thing up here, but I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap right here because I don't want to lose this distinction between this edge and this bottom of the pot, right? I haven't even added any paint to my brush. I'm still using what was originally on there. All right. Rinse off my brush a little bit. And now just a little bit of water on it. Not too much, again. Just a little bit of water. I'm smearing this color out. Just kind of blending this out a little bit. Not taking it all the way to the edges, right? I want to leave a little bit of white on those edges because that'll give me the chance to make it pronounced from the background later on. Because we got to really have that contrast to keep the illusion of space. I'm just kind of gently blending this stuff in here. And then, of course, we have some, maybe a little bit in the pot here. I'll worry about that in a little while. All right. So we got a nice little blend on our pot. Again, if you're with me, good job. Thanks for coming. I'm going to clean off my brush now. Rinse it really well. Dry it. Let's see, what should we work on now? I think next I'm going to go ahead and add some green into my my plants. So I got my brush, rinse it off really well. I get some green. And then I want to pay attention here in this case to where the light is coming from against. Remember how we left the light on the sides of the pot here? We're going to try to leave a little bit of light on the top of our leaves so we can maybe put in a little bit of yellow. You know, you can add a little bit at a time. That's how I like to sort of teach myself most of the time, is just adding a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. Figure it out as you go. Now I'm just making really light brush strokes here because I kind of want to like keep a texture to this. Again, there are so many different ways to do this, and I'm sure there are more than I can imagine. But this is just the way I like to do it. There's no wrong way if you're doing it a little differently. Just darkening up the underside of some of these leaves. Alright, and maybe I'll go some really light brush strokes in here. That's how you get those really thin lines, just a less pressure, right? Yes, absolutely. You can use crayons, color pencils, markers. The principles of, creating the illusion of 3D on a 2D space, like, creating an image like this, they span across different mediums. It's a lot about contrast and about color, and there's worlds you could study about saturation level and the thickness of lines and how they all create different levels of dimension. So there's really no wrong way to do it. You could do this with just, you can create depth with just ink, just a black and white pen. You see in comics all the time. Alright. While I got some green on my brush, I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit in these stems here. So I'm not going to go all the way up into my flowers. I'm just going to hint at some of these things here because some of it's going to be covered up by those purple flowers, and I want those to pop, And then my green. Maybe get a little bit more paint on there. It's probably not enough. We need a little darker. Again, just leaving a little bit of space in between so those purple flowers can pop out later on. I'm just going back in, adding a little bit more of this dark green. I want it to be a little bit darker. All right. We're going to add some more in there a little bit later to make it really make the saturated color. We're just going to let that dry for now while we work on something else. All right, so I'm going to rinse off my brush. Rinse off, this is a brush. And I'm going to start adding a little bit of the color into my flowers. Because that's why we're here, right? A little bit of color into the flowers. Alright, so I rinsed off my brush really well again, got all that color off there. Now I'm going to start with the darker purple under here. So find your dark purple, clean brush, get some water on there. Not too much because you still want enough for that purple to show through, and you don't want, in my case I don't want it to drip down the canvas here. Drip down my board. Now with this purple and the point of your brush, really lightly, you can go in and at the bottom of all these butterflies, all right, I'm going to start looking at this like these butterflies. The bottom is down here, the top's going to be up here. The bottom of all these butterflies, I'm going to just do little swoops of purple. Little swoops. They don't have to be perfect. Nature and organic things like plants, I think the less we worry about making them precise, the more we just let them happen, sometimes the more beautiful they come out, Just adding little dabs of this dark purple at the bottoms of these butterflies. Right? Little swoops, whatever you want to call them. Little blobs. Run out of paint here. Get some more purple. I think that looks pretty good for now. I know I'm moving pretty fast, so I'll give you guys a second to catch up while I'm sort of catching up myself over here. Just add a little bit more purple here. Part of the goal here is to have sort of a vibrant foreground, you know, the vibrant subject in the foreground. And by that I mean this plant with, you know, the pretty flowers and stuff. And then the background, I'm just going to kind of leave a little bit loose and filled in just kind of loosely. You know, but for these colors, we really want them to pop. We really want them to be saturated and really like punch out at you. You can rinse off your brush after you're done with that. So I'm just gonna see, what are we gonna do next here? What's that green? That green dry yet? Looks pretty dry. You know what we'll do? We'll just go ahead and add the pink now too. After you get that purple in there, go ahead and rinse off your brush again. And this time I'm just going to get a little bit of red. And I'm kind of watering down this red a little bit up here. You know, you can kind of get some of it on your brush and kind of push it around until it's a little bit lighter. If you have white on your watercolor palette, that's cool. You can use that. But if not, just dilute it a little bit. You know, it'll turn out pretty pinky. You can even add, and this is kind of cool, you can even add maybe a little bit of orange to it. I'll give it more of a peachy tone, which I think is kind of fun. Alright, so I got my little peachy tone or pink, whatever you choose. Now I'm going to go and add this more towards the top of the little butterfly shapes. Again, in some of these areas, just like we left white here, we left some light areas here. In some of these areas, I might still leave just a tiny tad bit of white. Again, just so it pushes out from that blue that we put down later on. We're thinking ahead a little bit. With watercolors, I notice you got to kind of think ahead sometimes. Maybe that's just me. It's okay. Let's go ahead and add in this pink and peachy color in here. Maybe add a couple on their own up here, kind of floating around, hanging loose, doing their thing in outer space. Do some over here. And notice I'm really not paying that much attention to making this perfect. We could be doing that, but I don't know. It's just more fun this way. Need some more pink down here. I feel like it's not pinkish, peachish enough. That's looking pretty good. If that purple's still wet, you might bleed into some of that, but that's okay. You know, just be aware of it. Just be aware of how the paint moves around. That's really what learning different mediums is about. You know, once you understand those basic principles of design and depth, learning a medium is just like learning a language that only has a few words. You know, you got how long the paint takes to dry, what the colors are like when they mix together, all that kind of stuff. Alright, so I'm going to rinse off my brush. I'm going to let that purple and pink stuff dry. Now I'm going to go down to my leaves and work on those a little bit more, because I feel like they're kind of cool looking, but they could use a little bit more life, a little bit more density to them. So I'm going to start just by taking a little bit of my clean brush here, I'm gonna get some yellow. My yellow's a little messy. That's okay if yours is messy. I got some green in there, which in this case is not a bad gig. If you have a color in there that you don't want, just clean it out, you know? I got some yellow. And I'm going to go in here and just add some yellow to the tops up here, right? Yellow, yellow into my plants. Again, if you're using colored pencils or crayons or whatever, you can do the same exact thing here. In fact, sometimes after these watercolor paintings dry, I like to go in with colored pencils. Afterwards, I just like the effect it makes. Let me get some more yellow. I got this yellow on my brush, and just using the tip of my brush, if I can, pull a little bit of yellow into this stem here. Just a little bit of yellow into that. I did not know that about orchids living up to and over 100 years. That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. All right, now I want to talk about the darker color for a second. To make this darker color, I didn't add black in this case. What I did was I actually added red to the green, and I think I mentioned before in another tutorial, but adding the complement of a color, you know, gives you a darker tone of that color, and it's, in a lot of cases, it's a better way to get like a shadowy part, like a shaded part. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to get some green paint. I'm going to get some green paint, and I'm going to put it down on an empty spot on my palette, or, you know, I'm just using the back of this thing right now. Get some green on there. Alright, and so I don't make a mess, I'm going to rinse off my brush really well. Rinse off my brush, get a little bit wet, get some red, and add that into the green. It doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot. You just want a darker color. It's like a darker version of that green. It's hard to see on my little palette there, but when I bring it in here, this is pretty dark. I want to make sure that I focus on the bottom sides down here. So down here it's going to be dark, right? Just kind of brushing in here really lightly. Down here it's going to be pretty dark. Down here maybe. I'm just going to put some of this down real fast, and then we'll move it around with a clean brush. Down here, maybe in this pot it's going to be pretty dark. And there's a lot going on down here. And then even maybe a little bit, just going to go right on the right side of this plant right here, just real subtle. Really lightly. Try to get that darker tone right on one side of there. Again, you can do that with pencil or crayon or whatever. Yeah, Steve, that's absolutely. I do that all the time. I turn these into greeting cards when you can paint something like this pretty quickly, and it's always fun. I think it's always fun to give somebody a greeting card with like a personal touch. I'm just really, with really light pressure, just pulling my brush back here. You know, again, you could get lost in doing details and stuff, but I'm not going to do that today. This is all more just about having fun, learning some new things, practicing some new things. See, that's pretty good. Could get more, but I don't know. Never really a good thing. It's kind of a little cartoony version of a shadow. I think I'm being inspired by my friend Steve here today. I'm going to rinse off my brush. And since I want this a little darker, this pot a little darker, I'm going to actually mix up some colors here too. I'm going to get a little brown, a little bit of this brown that I used for the pot. Yeah, mix it up, slap it up here, mix it up, slap it up here. And then I'm going to get just a little bit of blue. Just a tiny bit of blue, right? I rinsed off my brush. I got a tiny bit of blue. I'm going to mix it in with this brown so I get a nice darker version of that. Now this thing should be pretty dry by now. I'm going to go accentuate some of these shadows, some of these darker areas. I don't know, I like sound effects sometimes when I'm painting. I feel like they help me. Now I got a lot of paint on there, so I'm going to just clean off my brush a little bit and then use a clean brush to brush it out. Still trying to leave a little bit on the sides there. So just a little bit more blue. I want to get it nice and dark in the middle here. Maybe I'll leave in a little blue down here too. Down here in my flower pot. A little bit of this blue-brown mix down here. Right? Now we have to do some background in. Now we could have painted the background at the beginning and waited for it to dry, but who has time for all that? How are we doing on time today? Speaking of time, 5:35. We're doing all right. We still got some time we can put together into this. All right, so you want to kind of let this dry just a little bit, only because when we start painting next to it, if the colors start bleeding into it, it's going to get a little blurry. If it does, that's okay too. That's all part of the fun. Sometimes you get unexpected happy accidents. Like this one was pretty fun, you know, some of it bled into here, and you know, some of these bled out a little bit, and that's okay. It's alright, they're all kind of unique and fun in their own way. But I am going to do things a little bit differently. Before, I was mostly applying paint to the brush and then applying it onto the paper. In this case, I'm going to wet the paper a little bit and then apply the paint to that. Now this works a lot better if you're laying the surface flat. We're going to see what happens on this inclined surface together for fun. But yeah, I like to wet the paper a little bit when I'm doing a background, or you know, just something where you want the paper to, the watercolor to bleed a little bit more. You know, different techniques, different effects, fun stuff. So I'll start off with the top up here. How's my stuff? Is it dry? Is it dry? It's pretty dry. Dry enough. So we'll do this in sections because I don't want to go in all in at once. I rinse off my brush really well. I'm going to get some water on it. This is just water, right? And then I'm just going to wet this paper down. Now when I wet the paper down, I'm going to try not to touch the objects that I was painting before. Alright, it's kind of a time sensitive thing, so also you should probably use a bigger brush than this if you're on a bigger project, but whatever, it's all fun. I'm going to rinse off my brush a little bit now. I got some blue on my brush. Now that this paper is wet, it should blend out a little bit better. Now you can use, again, if the paper's laying flat on the table, you can use more paint than I'm using. And if it gets out of control, you can even tap it with a paper towel or whatever. just tap it with a paper towel, or even just if you're looking for some sort of texture or something like that, you can stamp something down in it, you know. No wrong way to do it. Again, I don't have any water down here, so I'm just gonna dampen this. Going right up to the edge of my pot. I'm leaving the areas that I don't want to paint on. I'm leaving those dry as possible. Because when I do come in with this paint, woo, oh yeah, there we go. Some paint. When I do come in with this paint, you know, I don't want it to bleed into that area. There's already water there. There's a high chance that something like that's going to happen. Got a little bit extra paint on there, so I'm just going to push it around and smooth it out. Smooth it out until it makes sense in my little world here. It's coming together. It's coming together okay. I'm going to take this right here just in case. Just in case we start bending out here. No, Mosa, go downstairs. That's my dog. Alright, so let's see, other side, get my brush pretty damp here. Get some water, spread it around. It gets a little tricky up in these flower areas, but you know, take your time. Take your time, just be mindful of it, you know. And part of the joy of making art is that you're focused on this and not whatever else might be troubling you. And you're accomplishing something at the same time. So, alright, so I got my brush, I wet the paper down again. I'm going to get some more blue. Let's see, this tape up here. Just trying to carefully pull it down near these flowers. If you leave a little white area, that's okay. It's okay, it'll only help. They'll serve as little highlights. Kind of pulling some of this down into here. A little bit more blue on my brush. Same thing down here, just get a little water. Trying hard not to touch these other areas, but you know, I see I'm pulling some of the purples in, it's alright. You'll notice my paper is bowing out a little bit. It's because I'm using the paper from the pack, but if you get better watercolor paper, you know, the more water it'll hold up. Alright, got a little bit of water on the paper, and again, same thing. Just get some blue, spread it around, kind of pull it into these little nooks and crannies up in here. Find its way up in there. Down here between the leaves. A little bit more blue down here. Again, trying not to go into my plant space. In fact, this is a really great way to explain this here too, is, you know, the reason we left the edge of that pot bright is because we can come down here and say, alright, now this is behind it. Right? So you have a contrast. It's always better, I mean, well, I won't say better, but it's easier to work from some sort of example. You know, if you have a picture of flowers or something that you can reference, just when you're doing that, don't, or try not to get tied up in trying to make it perfect. And if you do, look at, you know, Sunflower Painting by Van Gogh or any of those super famous pieces of art. You know, they're not photo representations, they're expressions of an experience, you know. Just kind of adding some of this stuff in. Something else I'm going to do while I have this blue is I'm going to add a little bit of shadow down at the bottom, because it'll help to define that space. You know, right now we have a beautiful background and pretty flowers, but they're just kind of floating in space. So I'm going to get some more blue with my brush. And you can do the same thing too if you want. You can wet it down. I got a little bit of blue on my brush anyway just because it was kind of dirty. Now I just start underneath here, underneath the pot. Right? And then just kind of spread it out a little bit, right? You know, there's plants up there, these leaves are going to be cast in shadows, and then your stems and your flowers are going to be cast in shadows. So who's to say that shadow isn't just a little bit messy? Just a little bit. All right. Some more down in here. All right, we're getting real close. You guys are doing great. Rinsing off my brush. Rinsing off my brush. And now I'm going to go in with this orange here, this orange that you see around here. The reason I chose orange was because it's just a contrasting color. It's, you know, on the color wheel it's opposite of blue, and I figured I was going to keep it as simple as possible and still try to achieve some sort of, you know, table and shadow effect that I would just go with contrasting colors. And you can do it with purple and yellow or gold, you know, all kinds of different combinations. That wouldn't work for this one as well because we got that purple up there, but it's all good. All right, so now I got a wet brush with some orange, and I'm just going to go in and start doing horizontal brush strokes. Horizontal brush strokes, just smudging it in. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be precise. I'm just keeping the brush strokes horizontal though, because that kind of keeps like a table grainy effect, or it's easier for the mind to process that as a flat plane. That's pretty much it. Way to go. If you were with us through that, great job. And if not, feel free to check it out on YouTube or the Facebook Live archives on our Facebook page. Give it a shot. My friend Steve was talking earlier about doing this with colored pencils, and you certainly can do that. Another thing I like to do, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of come in with colored pencils afterwards. Since we got, how much time do we have? I got a couple more minutes. I won't get in trouble. So I'll just put this here, and we'll get another one of these. We'll get another one of these, like this one right here. And I'll just use this one because this is dry, but after this one is dry, you could use that too. Here are my colored pencils. You can get your colored pencils. These also come in the Art2Go bags. You can get some colored pencils and come in and add details if you want. Add different colors. I like to come in here and add some shadows afterwards. See See some blues maybe. So, you know, experiment with it. There's no right or wrong way to make this stuff. It's all just about finding out what you enjoy, you know, what you enjoy doing. And you never know, you may just come up with something really incredible. Just gotta give it a shot. What if I take some yellow even? Because that's something I would definitely do over here. And some more yellow and green maybe. If I came in with some more yellow. Alright. It just warms that plant right up. Or even, like, let's say, for instance, the background doesn't seem like it's, or, you know, this pot doesn't seem like it's really standing out from the background. We can always, you know, darken up this background with some pencil too. So really, it's all up to you. It's all about what you're, you know, you're trying to get done, or just having fun, really. I don't know. There's a million different things you could do. But yeah, definitely. If you all, you know, give it a shot, post them on Facebook or send them to us or something. We'd love to see your work. I love that. You know, I could sit here and paint flowers until I'm blue in the face, but, you know, we're doing this for y'all, so we would really love to see the work that you guys create. And if you have questions or special requests that you want us to do, just, you know, post to our page or send us a message, or, you know, send it to our YouTube channel, and we will do the best we can to accommodate. Down here. Anyway, I could go on for hours with this, but it's like fireworks. I could go on for a long time with this, but I want to let you guys do your own thing. Stay creative. Keep making art out there. Thanks for joining me, and we will see you again soon.